You were aware of the motion and the limits set by the court regarding the questioning and evidence presented in this case. Yet here we are, and it appears that the rules were not followed as instructed by the court during this trial. You were told clearly that certain matters were not to be brought up without first approaching the bench and seeking permission. Yet that is exactly what happened when you began asking questions regarding the complainant's actions and past behavior. The court had clearly outlined in the motion in limine that these lines of questioning were prohibited without first being reviewed by the court. The defense has violated these instructions and proceeded with asking questions that were not only irrelevant but also outside the boundaries of what had been permitted by the court before the trial even began. There are reasons why motions in limine are put in place. They are there to protect the integrity of the trial and ensure that both sides present their cases within the established rules. By ignoring these rules, you have risked the fairness of this process and the trust that the jury has in the proceedings. The issue with questioning the witness about matters unrelated to the case or prior acts of the complainant has created confusion and could potentially mislead the jury into thinking that these events are part of the case when they are not. This is a direct violation of the motion in limine, and it is crucial that the court address this violation before allowing any further questions that may cause confusion. It's not just about breaking the rules, it's about protecting the fairness of the trial. The purpose of the motion was to ensure that only relevant and admissible evidence was presented to the jury without distraction or distortion from issues that are unrelated to the case at hand. The defense should have approached the bench before asking any questions regarding these past events, but they chose not to, and now we have to deal with the consequences of that decision. You have stated that the defendant did not know the complainant beyond social media, and that this was the extent of their connection. But when questioned earlier in the trial, you mentioned that the defendant and the complainant were acquainted from high school. This is a significant contradiction, and it raises questions about the reliability of the defense's arguments. It's essential that the facts presented are clear and accurate, and when these details are not consistent, it undermines the case and creates unnecessary confusion for the jury. Furthermore, the witness has been questioned about the complainant's past actions in a way that suggests that these are relevant to the case when they are not. This is a direct violation of the court's ruling regarding the exclusion of certain evidence. It's important that all evidence and testimony presented are tied directly to the case and not used to make inferences about the character of any of the individuals involved unless it is directly relevant to the matter at hand, and the defense has failed to make that connection. The court has stated clearly that there should be no mention of past wrongs or acts that are unrelated to the case without first consulting the bench. This includes questioning the witness about the complainant's past actions or bringing up evidence that has not been properly reviewed by the court, yet the defense has continued to press these issues without permission. This creates confusion and leads to the risk of prejudicing the jury against the complainant or the defendant based on irrelevant facts. The defense must recognize that the rules of evidence and procedure exist for a reason. They are there to ensure that the trial is fair and that both sides have an equal opportunity to present their case without unfair advantage or distortion. When these rules are violated, it's not just a technicality. It's a serious matter that could impact the outcome of the case and the fairness of the trial. The court's instructions were clear. The defense was aware of the motion and the limitations it placed on their questioning, yet they chose to ignore it and proceed without following the proper procedures. This is a violation of the rules, and it's something that cannot be overlooked. The court has the responsibility to ensure that the trial is conducted fairly and in accordance with the law, and when these rules are broken, it is the court's duty to address the issue and take corrective action. Now we are at a point where the court must decide how to handle this violation of the motion in limine. Should the questioning continue? Should the testimony be allowed to stand? Or should the court take further action to address this violation? The decision will have far-reaching implications for the fairness of the trial and the integrity of the legal process. The court has also raised concerns about the questioning of the witness regarding the complainant's past actions and the possession of certain items such as photos or documents that may not be relevant to the case. The defense is asking about these items without first approaching the bench and seeking permission to do so. This is a direct violation of the court's orders and must be addressed immediately. The court cannot allow these questions to continue without first determining whether they are appropriate and relevant to the case at hand. The violation of the motion in limine cannot be ignored, and it must be dealt with in order to maintain the integrity of the trial and ensure that the jury is only presented with information that is relevant and admissible. The defense has clearly failed to follow the court's instructions, and the court must now determine the best course of action to address this violation and ensure that the trial proceeds fairly for all parties involved. At this point, it is clear that the defense has violated the motion in limine, and the court must decide how to handle this violation. The options are to either allow the questioning to continue despite the violation or take corrective action to ensure that the trial remains fair and that the jury is not misled by irrelevant or inadmissible information. The court must weigh the impact of this violation and make a decision that upholds the integrity of the trial process. The defense is aware of the motion and the limitations placed upon them, yet they chose to proceed without following the proper procedures. This is a serious matter, and the court must now determine the appropriate remedy for this violation. It is essential that the court take steps to ensure that the trial is conducted fairly and that the jury is not exposed to information that is irrelevant or prejudicial to the case at hand. Now the court has to consider whether any further action should be taken in light of the motion in limine being violated. The defense has already breached the motion by questioning the witness without first approaching the bench to seek permission from the court. The defense should have known better and adhered to the court's instructions. Yet they chose to ignore the rules and ask questions that were clearly prohibited under the motion in limine. It is important to note that the court's motion was not just a formality. It was designed to ensure that the trial remains fair and that only relevant evidence is presented to the jury. This violation could have serious consequences for the outcome of the trial, as it risks confusing the jury and making them believe that irrelevant matters are part of the case at hand. The defense's actions in questioning the witness about the complainant's character and past actions have complicated matters, and the court must now determine the appropriate remedy. The defense argues that they should be allowed to present certain evidence and testimony about the complainant's past actions in an attempt to show that the complainant's character is relevant to the case. However, the court has already ruled that such matters should not be raised without first seeking approval from the bench. The defense has failed to follow these rules and must now face the consequences of that failure. The issue at hand is not about the facts themselves, but about the rules governing how and when those facts can be introduced into the trial. The court has made it clear that the defense must approach the bench before raising certain issues, and it is the responsibility of the defense to follow those instructions by ignoring the court's rulings. The defense has put the fairness of the trial at risk, and the court must now decide how to address this violation. The defense's failure to approach the bench before asking about the complainant's past actions and character is a violation of the motion in limine. It is important to understand that motions in limine exist to protect the integrity of the trial process and to ensure that the jury is not influenced by irrelevant or prejudicial information by violating this motion. The defense has undermined the court's efforts to ensure a fair trial, and it is now up to the court to decide how to proceed. While the defense may argue that they have a right to question the witness about certain matters, it is clear that those questions fall outside the boundaries of what was allowed under the court's motion. In limine, the defense has not provided any valid reason for failing to approach the court before asking these questions, and the court must take this into consideration when deciding how to address the violation. It is also worth noting that the defense has not provided any evidence that the complainant's past actions or character are relevant to the case at hand. Simply stating that the complainant's past behavior may be relevant does not make it so. The court has already ruled that these matters are not admissible without first seeking approval, and the The defense has not made a compelling argument as to why they should be allowed to proceed with questioning the witness about them. As we move forward in this trial, the court must remain vigilant in ensuring that the rules are followed and that the jury is not exposed to irrelevant or inadmissible evidence. The defense's actions in violating the motion in limine have complicated matters, and the court must now determine the appropriate course of action to correct this violation. One option available to the court is to exclude any testimony or evidence that was improperly introduced due to the violation of the motion in limine. This could involve striking certain questions from the record and instructing the jury to disregard them. The court may also choose to issue sanctions against the defense for their failure to adhere to the rules and for violating the motion in limine. Another option is for the court to issue a stern warning to the defense and allow the trial to proceed with caution. This would involve reminding the defense of the importance of following the court's rulings and instructing them to refrain from raising any further issues that are not directly relevant to the case at hand. Whichever course of action the court chooses, it is essential that the integrity of the trial be preserved and that the jury is not misled or confused by irrelevant or inadmissible information. The court must also consider the potential impact of the defense's violation on the jury's perception of the case. It is possible that the jury may begin to question the credibility of the complainant based on the improper questions raised by the defense. This could result in a miscarriage of justice if the jury's judgment is influenced by information that was not properly admitted into evidence. Ultimately, the court has the responsibility to ensure that the trial is conducted fairly and that all parties are given an equal opportunity to present their case in accordance with the law. The defense's violation of the motion in limine has put that fairness at risk, and it is now up to the court to determine the appropriate remedy to ensure that the trial remains just and that the jury is not exposed to improper or irrelevant information. The court must make it clear that violations of the rules and motions will not be tolerated. In order to maintain the integrity of the legal process, the defense must understand that their actions have consequences and that the court has the authority to take corrective measures to address these violations and preserve the fairness of the trial. The violation of the motion in limine is a serious matter that cannot be ignored. The defense must be held accountable for their actions, and the court must take steps to ensure that the trial continues. In a fair and just manner, it is essential that the rules of procedure are followed in order to protect the rights of all parties involved and to ensure that the trial is conducted with the utmost integrity. In conclusion, the court must take action to address the violation of the motion in limine and ensure that the trial proceeds in accordance with the rules and guidelines established by the court. The defense's failure to follow the court's instructions has put the fairness of the trial at risk, and the court must take the necessary steps to correct this violation and protect the integrity of the trial process.